Calaroga Shark Media.
Hello and welcome to Romance Weekly. This episode is titled Pirates of New York, Part 1, A Storm to Remember.
Kara Thompson stared out the bus window as the New York City skyline came into view. At 25, this was her first solo trip to the big city, and excitement bubbled in her chest. Growing up in Allentown, Pennsylvania, she'd always dreamed of the bright lights and bustling streets of NYC. "First time in the city?" the elderly woman next to her asked kindly. Kara nodded, her blonde ponytail bouncing. "Is it that obvious?" the woman chuckled. "You've got that wide-eyed look. Don't worry, dear. New York's a magical place. You'll love it." As the bus pulled into Port Authority, Kara gathered her backpack and stepped out into the chaos of 42nd Street. The noise, the smells, the sheer energy of the place overwhelmed her senses. She pulled out her phone, double-checking the directions to her hostel in the Lower East Side. After a nerve-wracking subway ride, was that man really eating a whole rotisserie chicken on the train? Kara emerged onto the streets of Lower Manhattan. She found her hostel, a narrow building wedged between a bodega and a vintage clothing store, and checked in. Her roommate, a bubbly Australian named Emma, was already there. "G'day, first time in the Big Apple?" Kara laughed. "Is there a sign on my forehead or something?" Emma grinned. "Nah, just a guess. So, what's on your New York bucket list?" As they unpacked, Kara rattled off her plans. Times Square, Central Park, the Met. "Oh, and I really want to check out South Street Seaport. I read online that they sometimes have historical reenactors there. I've always been fascinated by old New York, especially the maritime history." "Sounds like a plan," Emma said. "Mind if I tag along tomorrow? I could use a guide to keep me on the right side of the road." The next morning, Kara and Emma set out to explore the city. They snapped selfies in Times Square, picnicked in Central Park, and got hopelessly lost in the Met. By late afternoon, they were ready for their final stop, South Street Seaport. As they approached the historic district, Kara's eyes lit up at the sight of the tall ships docked along the pier. "Oh wow," she breathed. "It's like stepping back in time." Meanwhile, 240 years in the past, the pirate ship the Salty Wench cut through the choppy waters near New York Harbor. Captain Jack Rusty Cutlass stood at the helm, his weathered face creased with concern as he eyed the ominous storm clouds gathering on the horizon. "Captain!" shouted First Mate Peg-Leg Pete, hobbling across the deck. "That there storm looks right nasty. Shouldn't we be turning back?" Rusty stroked his impressively unkempt beard, narrowing his eyes at the approaching tempest. "Turn back? And miss out on all the fun? Ha! Rusty Cutlass fears no storm, you lily-livered landlubber." As if on cue, a bolt of lightning split the sky, followed by a thunderous boom that shook the very planks beneath their feet. "All hands on deck!" Rusty bellowed, his voice carrying over the howling wind. "Batten down the hatches and hold on to your britches, boys. We're in for a wild ride." The crew scrambled to secure the ship as the storm engulfed them. Rain lashed at their faces, and waves crashed over the sides, threatening to sweep them overboard. Rusty clung to the ship's wheel, squinting through the deluge. "I've never seen a storm like this, Captain," Peg-Leg Pete shouted, clinging to a nearby rope. "Aye," Rusty agreed, a hint of worry creeping into his voice. "There's something unnatural about this one." Suddenly, a blinding flash of light enveloped the ship. Rusty felt a strange tingling sensation throughout his body, as if every hair was standing on end. Then, as quickly as it had begun, the storm subsided. Rusty blinked, rubbing his eyes as he tried to adjust to the sudden brightness. As his vision cleared, his jaw dropped in astonishment. Before them stood a skyline unlike anything they had ever seen. Towering structures of glass and steel reached towards the heavens, glittering in the sunlight. Strange vessels of all shapes and sizes crowded the harbour, none of them bearing any resemblance to the ships they knew. "Shiver me timbers," Rusty breathed. "I don't think we're in Kansas anymore, Pete." "Captain," Pete replied, his voice quavering, "we weren't in Kansas to begin with." Rusty shot him a withering look. "It's an expression, you barnacle-brained buffoon." As they approached the harbour, they noticed a bustling marketplace filled with colourfully dressed people. Signs advertised something called South Street Seaport, whatever that meant. "Well, lads," Rusty announced, straightening his tricorn hat, "let's go see what kind of strange new world we've stumbled upon." They docked their ship and disembarked, drawing curious stares from passers-by. A small crowd began to gather, pointing and whispering excitedly. "Ahoy there, good people," Rusty called out, trying to sound authoritative despite his confusion. "We be humble pirates seeking, directions?" To his surprise, the crowd burst into applause. A young man in strange, tight-fitting trousers approached, holding out a rectangular object. "Dude, your costumes are amazing. Can I get a selfie?" Rusty blinked, utterly baffled. Whatty?" Before he could react, the young man had sidled up next to him, held out the strange rectangle, and there was a bright flash. Rusty yelped, stumbling backward. "Witchcraft," he cried, drawing his cutlass. The crowd, however, only seemed more delighted by this display. Suddenly, people began tossing small metal discs and colourful pieces of paper at their feet. Pegleg Pete bent down to examine them. "Captain," he said, his eyes wide with wonder, "I think it's some kind of currency." Rusty stroked his beard thoughtfully. "Well, well, it seems these strange folk appreciate a good pirate when they see one. Perhaps this new world won't be so bad after all." As the crew began scooping up their unexpected bounty, Kara and Emma pushed their way through the growing crowd. "Oh my gosh," Kara exclaimed, her eyes wide with excitement. "Emma, look! They must be doing some kind of historical reenactment. It looks so authentic." Emma squinted at the pirates. "I don't know, Kara. Something seems a bit off about them. They look confused." But Kara was already making her way towards Rusty, her face alight with enthusiasm. "Excuse me," she called out, "are you guys really pirates?" Rusty turned at the sound of her voice, and for a moment he was struck dumb. She was the most beautiful woman he had ever laid eyes on, even if her attire was peculiarly immodest. "Aye, lass," he managed to croak out. "Captain Jack Rusty Cutlass at your service. And who might you be?" Kara beamed, extending her hand. "I'm Kara, from Allentown. I'm visiting New York for the weekend. This is so cool. I've always been fascinated by pirates." As Rusty took her hand, feeling utterly out of his depth, he couldn't shake the feeling that his life was about to become very, very complicated. Meanwhile, Pegleg Pete had wandered over to a nearby signpost, squinting at the unfamiliar words. "Captain," he called out, his voice filled with disbelief, "you might want to take a look at this." Rusty reluctantly tore his gaze away from Kara and joined his first mate. There, in bold letters, was a sign that read, "Welcome to South Street Seaport, established 1967. "Great Neptune's beard," Rusty muttered. "I think we're going to need a bigger boat." Kara, oblivious to the pirate's true predicament, peppered Rusty with questions about life at sea. "What's it like to sail on a real pirate ship? Have you ever found buried treasure? Oh, and how do you keep your teeth so white without modern dentistry?" Rusty, still reeling from the shock of their temporal displacement, struggled to keep up with her rapid-fire inquiries. "Well, lass, life at sea is, salty. And as for me teeth, Wait, what do you mean by modern dentistry?" Emma, watching the exchange with growing suspicion, tugged on Kara's arm. "Kara, I think we should go. These guys are taking this roleplay a bit too seriously." But Kara was enchanted. "Oh, Emma, don't be such a spoilsport. This is the most exciting thing that's happened all day." As the sun began to set on their first day in this strange new world, Rusty and his crew found themselves facing an uncertain future, but with a pocket full of mysterious currency and the promise of adventure and perhaps romance on the horizon, the pirate captain couldn't help but feel a twinge of excitement. "So, Captain Cutlass," Kara said, her eyes sparkling with mischief, "what's next on your New York adventure?" Rusty glanced at his bewildered crew, then back at the captivating young woman before him. With a roguish grin, he declared, "Well, me dear, I reckon we're about to embark on the greatest plunder of our lives. The question is, are you brave enough to join us?" As night fell over the South Street seaport, the stage was set for a time-bending, swashbuckling adventure that would turn both Kara's and Rusty's worlds upside down. New York City in 2024 was about to experience a pirate invasion like no other, and neither the past nor the present would ever be the same again.
Romance Weekly is a production of Calaroga Shark Media. Executive producers Mark Francis and John McDermott. Portions of this podcast may have been created with the assistance of AI.
Calaroga Shark Media.